Hi, this is Randy Wimmer and welcome back to Government Contracting Academy's GovCon Business 101 course. This topic is titled Debunking Government Contracting Myths. I'll ask the question that most of you are thinking. If the federal government contracting industry is such a great market, then why aren't more people achieving their dreams as contractors? Well, first off, there's a lot more of us out there than you know about. Most wealthy entrepreneurs in the federal government contracting industry launch small businesses that you've never heard of. Their companies typically support nested government organizations that lay deep in the federal government organization chart. And when they sell their companies, they are typically acquired by companies that you've never heard of either. Even more obfuscating, government contracting small business owners don't arrive at their high-rise corporate offices via limousine service and take the private elevator to their corner office. In many cases, they are embedded with their contract teams working on government site. Yet these folks are making millions of dollars. However, the question is still valid. This market should be flooded with aspiring entrepreneurs, and it's not. Here's why. There are 5 reasons why such a relatively small number of companies pursue the federal government contracting industry. First, most corporate leaders either lack the initiative or patience to learn and follow the process to sell their goods or services to the federal government. With impatient investors, maturing debt, and shrinking burn time, many small business stakeholders are too impatient to pursue the longer federal government sales cycle and forego this lucrative market. However, it's not really the length of the federal government sales cycles that's the problem. It's really the duration of the learning curve to successfully pursue federal government contracts. Without an effective training program, a few months sales cycle, which would be acceptable, turns into a few years of hard-learned lessons. In their defense, learning this industry is incredibly difficult. This is completely unbelievable, but not a single MBA program specializes in doing business with the world's largest customer, the U.S. federal government. It's shocking, but somehow the universe of higher education has overlooked this trillion-dollar business. Admittedly, there are training companies and consultants that provide specific training programs, but they are all tailored to companies with very, very deep pockets. These programs assume their target customers pursue multi-billion-dollar contracts and have tens of millions of dollars to invest in their bid and proposal efforts. Here's a totally free piece of advice for any startup founder who has $30 million to invest in a proposal. Skip this industry and just buy your small private island. Second, many companies believe that the federal government contracting industry has razor-thin profit margins, and this industry is just simply not worth their effort. This is a commonly believed perception regarding federal government contracting. But what is the basis of this myth? Who perpetuates this lie? Well, it's hard to believe, but the federal government does. Why? The federal government has been burned so many times by the press with stories of $400 hammers, $600 toilet seats, $7,000 coffee makers that they will only give contract awards to, quote unquote, low profit bidders. And on paper, they do. To give the government the political cover that they want, bidders propose a ridiculously low profit margin while managing to a much higher, yet reasonable, profit during the execution of the contract. In other words, bidders will propose X% profit and manage to a much higher Z% profit. This is a common phrase in this industry. Personally, I've bid as low as 3% profit and managed to well over 30% profit, while still meeting all contractual obligations. Let's be honest, the government knows that not a single reasonable company would ever assume the risk of any contract requiring millions, if not billions of dollars of work for a comical 3% return. In summary, the razor-thin profit margin myth is just that, a myth promulgated by the government entities to make themselves look like good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. Now, isn't that funny? The third reason why so few companies pursue federal government contracts is somewhat ridiculous. Many companies are concerned about the negative perception of federal government contracting. Admittedly, federal government contractors frequently get painted in a less than flattering manner. Just go to the movies and you'll watch greedy defense contractors serve as ruthless mercenaries, create apocalyptic bioweapons, and even try to weaponize dinosaurs. Yes, poor, innocent dinosaurs. Due to my security clearance, I can neither confirm nor deny the presence of velociraptors in our defense arsenal. Greed and a total lack of ethics, if not common sense, are the underlying themes Hollywood and the 24/7 news networks use to portray government contractors. The days of heroically portraying Rosie the Riveter are long gone. Sadly, supporting your country has waned in popularity, and that's a shame because contractors provide so much value to our country. In fact, I believe federal government contractors are a pillar of our national strength. Now, a pillar of our national strength? Yeah, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that I'm starting to wax poetic about the virtues of government contracting. Well, allow me to explain before you start laughing too loudly. The strength of our nation is the American will. It's in its people, ingenuity, and industry, not its government. Our government's value is that it does not oppress its people or suppress their potential. Most of the time, our government enables its people to do great things. Just think about World War II. When Pearl Harbor was attacked on December 7th, 1941, the U.S. Navy had a total of 350 ships, with many being obsolete. On Victory over Japan Day in 1945, the U.S. Navy had 6,788 ships. Let's put this into perspective. Over 70% of the combatant ships in the world were flying the American flag at the end of World War II. On the high seas, the U.S. Navy had a 2-to-1 advantage over the rest of the entire world combined. It is simply irrefutable that our nation's industrial might built the strongest Navy the world has ever seen. Government employees did not build those ships, contractors did. The same thing is true for our tanks and aircraft. Without taking anything away from the courageous servicemen and women who bravely sacrificed so much to fight tyranny in our world, they cannot be successful without having the right resources, tools, and support. Rosie the Riveter and other government contractors did their part in giving these brave men and women what they needed to win World War II. Almost a half century later, contractors played an even larger role in winning the Cold War. Today, contractors are still helping to defend and support our nation. And it's not just national security. As much as I complain about traffic and the conditions of our road living in Northern Virginia around the Washington, D.C. Beltway, our highway system is second to none. Every time I drive in another country, I renew my appreciation for President Eisenhower and the contractors who created our highway system. The fourth reason why so many small business owners choose not to enter the federal government contracting industry is because of their insecurity writing proposals. Many of these folks believe the myth that proposals must read like they were written by Ernest Hemingway or John Steinbeck, a couple of my favorite authors. I are an engineer and can't write too good, and I can fully empathize with people who have insecurities about their writing abilities. Here's the good news about successful proposals. They're scored and not read. Let me clarify that statement. Of course they're read, but they're not read and graded like your English 101 professor. A proposal is read more like a word search puzzle, where the source selection board is seeking answers to specific requirements. Allow me to illustrate this point. Very early in my contracting career, I took a proposal writing class. On the first day, we were given 2 proposals and the government's evaluation scorecard for the design and manufacturing for our nation's next premier fighter jet. We were asked to select the winner. The first proposal was well organized and specifically addressed each requirement, highlighting the value for each of its features. However, the writing was horrible. It appeared to be written by a competent 4th grader. The second proposal was extremely well written. It read like it was written by a great American novelist. However, it did not easily align with the requirements, and the proposal failed to address how the aircraft design features would add value to the government. The class unanimously scored the first proposal much higher than the better written but poorly aligned second proposal. The first proposal had the design and manufacturing specifications for a single-engine Cessna airplane. The second proposal included the performance specification for the next generation fighter jet. Yet they were not communicated in such a way to be easily scored. Having a better, faster, or cheaper solution is irrelevant unless it's evaluated with a high score. Much more important than your grammar is that a proposal include the following 4 perspectives. The first perspective is your company's perspective. This is your company's abilities and qualifications. Every bidder includes this perspective. The second perspective is the customer's perspective. This entails addressing the customer's needs and interests. Most, but not all of these are provided in the request for proposal. Shockingly, many small business bidders do not address this perspective. That's why it has been my experience that about a third to a half of small business bidders are non-compliant. The third perspective is the external perspective. This perspective addresses the external requirements that both parties must comply with. For example, understanding why the government listed a specific requirement will demonstrate your full understanding of the requirement, and it increases the source selection board's confidence in your ability to perform. Most of the time, these are not provided in the request for proposal. Small businesses rarely include this perspective in their proposals. The fourth perspective is your competition's perspective. This is your competitor's strategy to win, and if you address this, then your ability to win significantly increases. For example, let's say that you are competing against a well-entrenched incumbent contractor for a studies and analysis contract with a customer that you have zero experience supporting. Now let's assume that the incumbent has contracts all over the organization, and you surmise that this company is going to repeatedly cite their deep domain knowledge of the customer's organization. That's tough to beat. However, you now know what you're up against, so you can ghost the incumbent. Ghosting in the federal government contracting world means that you highlight aspects of your proposal that makes your competitor look bad by omission. In our advantage, we have ISO 9001 certification, and the incumbent does not. This is what I would do. I would make ISO 9001 seem like it's 100% required for the successful completion of this contract. I would even go so far as to say that a bidder would be reckless and irresponsible to even bid on this contract without having ISO 9001. Regarding the incumbent's deep organizational presence via other contracts, I would repeatedly state that we have zero conflicts of interest performing analysis that could result in the defunding of other contracts within the organization. And very, very few small businesses address that fourth perspective. Trust me, it's extremely difficult to write a proposal that addresses all 4 perspectives for every major requirement. That's why you must build a proposal. To help me build a better proposal, I use a template that forces me to address each perspective for every major requirement in my detailed request for proposal shred. After I populate my template for each of the major requirements, I slam the text into a proposal document and sprinkle in a few introductory sentences and a few prepositional phrases to glue the chunks together. It's not pretty, but it makes a content-rich first draft. Most importantly, I have turned all subsequent editing activities into fitting the content into page constraints and making it more readable. You want to be wordsmithing as you edit and not creating content or addressing the 4 perspectives. Now, my English teacher would likely have a heart attack if she ever read this first draft, but as I've repeatedly stated, proposals are scored and not read. Moreover, the inclusion of all 4 perspectives is infinitely more important than flowing prose. Developing a template that forces you to include each perspective instills a level of discipline that simply cannot be achieved by starting on page 1 of a proposal and writing to the last page of the page limit. Again, a proposal must be built. And the 5th reason why so many startups do not pursue federal government contracting is that they are unwilling to make even the most modest investments in their company, despite the very low cost of market entry for federal government contracting. Without having zero corporate experience, these companies still do not invest in any corporate credentials such as ISO 9000 Quality Management System Certification or ISO 27001 Information Security Management System Certification. These certifications separate a company from their competitors. In fact, less than 0.1% of U.S. companies possess the prestigious ISO certification. And when you lack corporate experience, relevant past performances, and customer relationships, corporate credentials are vitally important. In fact, it's about all you have to offer. Having neither corporate experience nor corporate credentials to offer a proposal effort, many small businesses become frustrated that nobody wants to work with them, and they quickly leave the federal government contracting industry. Again, this industry you earn your money not by performing on a subcontract or prime contract, but by winning these contracts. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm more than happy about these negative government contracting industry perceptions and myths because it keeps 95% of U.S. companies from competing for federal government contracts. Yes, you heard that last statement correctly. Only 5% of U.S. companies are trying to get a piece of the federal government trillion-dollar spending pie. And trust me, the slices can get really big for those of us who are chasing this big pie. During our next topic, we'll discuss how to get the most out of this program. See you then.